Hello everybody, and welcome back to Lady of the Rings. I'm your host, Sophia, and today we are getting into Chapter 2 of the Fellowship of the Ring, The Shadow of the Past. Now, I love this chapter. I think it is so good. I think it reveals so much information. It gets us into the seriousness of everything, the darkness, and we really get to see more of how amazing Frodo's character is in this second chapter. We also get to see a little bit more of Sam, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding where Gandalf is, what's going on, etc. This chapter is incredibly dense, I should say, and there's a lot in here that you can dive deep into as far as lore goes, specific to the history of the ring. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. Oh no, I just spilled coffee on my book. I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is my second take recording this entire episode because yesterday I sat down to record. I looked really cute. Today I'm a little disheveled. I sat down to record and it turns out I was using the wrong mic. So I have to do the whole thing over again. And I was sitting here for like 2 hours talking about this chapter. Maybe it's for the best because I was not totally in the mood to do it yesterday. So today we're in the right mindset. We are excited to talk about all that is revealed from Gandalf in this chapter. It's just a lot of information. And I am considering doing a bonus episode to cover this content that Gandalf gets into specific to the last alliance of men and elves. And perhaps maybe for each chapter episode that I am going through, I'll do like a bonus shorter episode that goes into some of the lore specifically, because I just have so much to talk about these chapters and about Tolkien's writing that I don't even feel like I have time to get into the lore in each chapter. But I think it would be good bonus content, and like I said, I could learn alongside you guys. I'm not a Tolkien expert. I've tried to read the Silmarillion and failed like 5 times. But yeah, I just would have fun kind of learning it together, talking about it. So let me know if that's something you would be interested in. Anyway, chapter 2, A Shadow of the Past. Like I said, love this chapter. I also learned chapter 2 is actually the oldest chapter of the trilogy. Tolkien wrote it first before chapter 1 because he needed a way to link and connect Gollum's story and the ring and give the ring its history, and then go on to develop the rest of the story. I divided this chapter into, I guess, about like 5 sections. First, we have a section just talking about rumors of the outside, kind of around Hobbiton. Then we go on to a conversation between Sam and another rustic hobbit at the Green Dragon over some brews. Next, we see Gandalf again. Yay, Gandalf returns. And him and Frodo have a little slumber party and then get into some serious talks in the morning about the One Ring. The next section I have is the ring is the ring. So Gandalf kind of explains to Frodo why the One Ring is it, or he realizes it upon this test when he throws it in the fire. And then we get our discussion about the hunt for Gollum and where Gandalf has been and what him and Aragorn have been up to looking for the creature Gollum. And then finally, towards the end of the chapter, we get a really beautiful discussion about pity, fear, and we see Frodo step up to the plate and just have innate courage when faced with really dark times and a really great burden. So, starting off with the beginning of the chapter, rumors of the outside, we are again looking at the world of Middle-earth through the lens of hobbits and the Shire. And we're seeing how sheltered the Shire really is. And maybe as the reader right now, again, we're still at the beginning of the story, we don't really know the severity of all of these things going on, but we are placed through the lens of Shire gossip. Again, just like in chapter 1, right? And we also get some insight into the Hobbit goss, the hot Hobbit goss around Bilbo's departure. And the Hobbits think he died. They think that he died, and they think that Gandalf is the reason that he's dead, which I think is Kind of silly, right? So, I mean, Frodo knows that he's not dead, right? But all these hobbits are like, are you sure he's not dead? And are you sure Gandalf did not kill him? And he says no. And to prove that he believes that Bilbo is still alive, I think this is so funny. Frodo continues to throw a party every year for Bilbo's birthday. The year after Bilbo leaves, he throws a 112th birthday, which he called a 100-weight feast. So every year he throws this birthday party for Bilbo, which is so sweet because he clearly cares so much about Bilbo. And it also says in this chapter that Frodo begins, like, he wishes at times that he followed Bilbo away. And it says, half unknown to himself, the regret that he had not gone with Bilbo was steadily growing, and that he grows restless and kind of wishes to leave the Shire. His friends notice this because, unlike Bilbo, it says, Frodo does have a lot of good friends and a lot of people that care about him, especially Merry and Pippin, Peregrine Took. They are a little bit concerned about him, and all the other hobbits, again, are like, this guy's weird, whatever, and his friends are keeping an eye on him, but he started to wander around the borders of the Shire, which is very strange for hobbits. We know that hobbits are homebodies. They like things that they like what they know, they don't like what they don't know, and they don't understand. And again, this is almost a privilege, right? That the hobbits don't need to leave the comforts of their home or understand the complexities of the outside world. We then move into a discussion of Shire gossip around rumors that are happening in the world outside. And this is when we start to bring in a darker tone to the chapter. Basically, the hobbits, to them, when they talk about the things that are going on, they talk about them like they are not real threats. There are some whispers of the enemy, the land of Mordor. Tolkien writes, that name that hobbits only knew in legends of the dark past, like a shadow in the background of their memories, but it was ominous and disquieting. So clearly they know it's dark, they know it's evil, but they don't feel as though it's a real threat at this point. We also get our first introduction to elves and to dwarves passing through the Shire, or through the lens of the Shire, and how to the Shire folk, to the hobbits, it's strange to see these types of folks coming through. The elves are leaving Middle-earth. Their time is done. They are passing westward. This east-west road that goes through the Shire is a direct route to where the elves are going to sail to the Undying Land, to Valinor, and it is also the road where dwarves will pass on their way to the Blue Mountains. So that's interesting. I didn't really know why these people were on this road, but clearly the road is being more traveled, and those people traveling on the road are concerned, which it's making its way to the hobbits at this point. It says, little of all this reached the ears of ordinary hobbits. So not everyone's hearing these rumors. Again, they're so sheltered, right? They're so sheltered from the outside world, and I think it speaks a lot to the prologue and what Tolkien does when he gives us this account concerning hobbits. However, I think what we're also learning is that hobbits of the Shire are different from other hobbits. Because in the prologue, Tolkien does give us this kind of anthropological account of different breeds, as he puts it, of hobbits, and they're not all afraid of other people. It sounds like the hobbits of the Shire specifically are especially closed off from the outside world and closed off from interacting with dwarves, because other hobbit breeds, according to Tolkien, were friends with elves like Bilbo and Frodo's descendants, and perhaps that's why hobbits of the Shire kind of look at them like they're a little strange, because they are more inclined to be friendly with other creatures like elves or dwarves, etc. So that's the hot goss around the Shire. Basically, there's some strange creatures out. Most of the Shire folk don't really like it or find it unsettling, but it doesn't seem to concern them too much. So to further exemplify our point about the Shire being sheltered, about most hobbits in the Shire being kind of distrusting of things that they consider strange or out of the ordinary, we next get a conversation between Samwise Gamgee and another hobbit by the name of Ted Sandyman at the Green Dragon. And this portion, I think the purpose of it is to both show us how sheltered hobbits are, like I said before, and how much they prefer not to be curious, I guess, about other things that they're not used to. But I think the chief purpose of this portion and this conversation between Sam and Ted at the Green Dragon is to introduce us to Samwise Gamgee as a character a little bit more. We met him in chapter 1. At this point, we only know him as the gardener at Bag End, specifically the original gardener's son. We haven't really learned much more about Sam other than that. And Sam is at the Green Dragon drinking away with Ted, who is the miller's son, it says. And I also think it's interesting, Tolkien refers to them both as rustic hobbits. And when you think about Frodo, Merry, and Pippin in comparison to Sam is like a working class hobbit. He's like a blue collar hobbit. Whereas Frodo, Merry, and Pippin are almost hobbit royalty. They're like hobbit aristocrats almost. So when you think about the Shire and wealth disparity in the Shire, I guess, you have your wealthy families of hobbits and then you have your kind of working class hobbits. Sam's the only working class hobbit out of the 4. And he is drinking with Ted and they're just kind of talking about the things that are going on. At this point, it says it's the spring of Frodo's 50th year. So that means that 17 years have passed since Bilbo left the Shire, and Frodo is now 50. He is almost the age that Bilbo was when Bilbo left on his adventure with the dwarves and with Gandalf. So during this conversation, Sam is all excited to talk about all these strange creatures walking around through the Shire. He's excited to talk about dragons, and he's also excited to talk about these tree men or walking trees that he says his cousin saw while he was walking, and he is completely laughed at. Like every time he brings up anything specific to the creatures that he's seeing, specific to dragons, etc., Ted's like, I don't believe any of this garbage. This is children's stories. These are fireside tales. Why are you so concerned with this? Like, get your head out of the clouds, Sam. Come on. But Sam is talking about these walking trees. But what about these tree men, these giants, as you might call them? They do say that one bigger than a tree was sent up away beyond the North Moors not long back. Who's they, says Ted. My cousin Hal, for one. He works for Mr. Boffin at Overhill and goes up to the North Farthing for the hunting. He saw one. And Ted's basically like, yeah, right. And Sam says he did, and it was walking 7 yards to a stride as if it was an inch. So if you've read the books, if you've seen the movies before, you know who the Ents are, right? They're basically tree guardians or tree people. Personally, my favorite creatures in Middle Earth. And if you know the Ents, you also maybe know that the Ents lost the Entwives. Basically, the Lady Ents were lost, and it's really sad because they are looking for the Entwives. And I wonder if this is a little nod to later in the story when we learn what Ents are and we learn that they lost the Entwives. Is this perhaps an Entwife that Sam's cousin saw? Just a thought. Let me know. Anyway, Sam is basically laughed out of the tavern by everybody there. And I just feel so bad for him because he just wants to talk about, these exciting things. It says there was some laughing and clapping. The audience seemed to think that Ted had scored a point. So everyone in the pub is basically laughing at Sam right now, which is sad. Sam then goes on to talk about the elves. He says, I've heard tell that the elves are moving west, that they're going to the harbors out away beyond the White Towers. Sam waved his arm vaguely. Neither he nor any of them knew how far it was to the sea, past the old towers beyond the western borders of the Shire. And Sam says, they are sailing. I can just see him like waving his little arm. They are sailing over the sea, and they are going into the west and leaving us, said Sam, half chanting the words, shaking his head sadly and solemnly. But Ted laughed. So he's just totally getting laughed at in this pub. Like, my poor Sam. And Ted's just basically like, whatever, why don't you care? We're in the Shire and nobody else cares about it. And Sam then gets kind of deep in thought about the elves. He is very taken with the elves, which it just makes me love Sam's character that much more, I guess, that he has this reverence for life and this reverence for beauty, for things that other people kind of dismiss. And he wants to talk about these things and he wants to acknowledge them and he wants to appreciate them and he wants to see them. He has hopes that he can eventually see an elf. He thinks that he maybe saw one day in the woods, hopes to see more one day. And it says, of all the legends that he had heard in his early years, such fragments of tales and half-remembered stories about the elves as the hobbits knew had always moved him most deeply. So I wonder what that says about Sam's character, because elves are the most beautiful creatures of Middle-earth, like the most striking. They are immortal beings. You could say they're the most powerful beings in Middle-earth. And little Sam, who's just a gardener, blue-collar hobbit in the Shire, has this reverence for their immortality and for their beauty, even though he is seemingly quite a simple hobbit. And I think that speaks a lot to the depth of his character and how emotional his character is. It moves him, the elves, just thinking about them, right? Thinking about how they're immortal and how they're leaving Middle-earth, and it makes him sad. So Ted is just still kind of shitting all over Sam, basically saying, you know, don't listen to the talk about the elves. Anything you listen to Mr. Bilbo tell you, whatever these stories are, they're crazy. So why are you paying attention? And at that point, Sam was so shut down by everyone at this tavern, including Ted especially, that it says he just sat silent and said no more. And can't you relate to that feeling of just being laughed at, being belittled, that you just don't want to, you're like, okay, I'm not going to say anything else then. Like, I'm sorry I tried to keep the conversation interesting. I'm sorry I tried to talk about things that you just wanted to laugh me out of the tavern about. However, Sam leaves the tavern, and I love, there's this little paragraph that we get after Sam leaves the tavern and he's walking home by himself that I think gives us this beautiful window into Sam's soul and who Sam is as a hobbit. Tolkien writes, it was early April and the sky was now clearing after heavy rain. The sun was down and a cool, pale evening was quietly fading into night. He walked home under the early stars through Hobbiton and up the hill, whistling softly and thoughtfully. So what we get here is Tolkien's language specific to Sam's walk home acting as a mirror for Sam's character. The sky clearing after heavy rain, a cool, pale evening quietly fading, whistling softly and thoughtfully. This language, it's so soft, it's so beautiful, it's persisting through darkness and after heavy rain, yet Sam is noticing the beauty of the night, and despite being laughed at to the point where he was silent and then just left, he's still whistling while he walks home. And I just think that's so sweet, so heartwarming, and this whole conversation between Ted and Sam at the Green Dragon gives us really more insight into who Sam is as a character. It gives us this really great introduction to him as this curious little hobbit who just is emotional and is excited by things that he finds moving, even if other people don't agree with him or don't want to talk to him about it. We then move into Gandalf returning and reappearing in the Shire after he's been gone. And at this point, again, it's been 17 years since Bilbo disappeared. So Frodo, he does not believe that he may ever see Gandalf again and thinks that he could have lost interest in hobbits. Tolkien writes, he would not discuss his own business or journeys and seemed chiefly interested in small news about Frodo's health and doing. So he's mostly concerned with how Frodo is doing. He says, you look the same as ever, Frodo. And then Frodo replies, so do you. But secretly, he thought that Gandalf looked older and more careworn. So we're seeing that Gandalf clearly is carrying this burden, and it's affecting even the way he looks to Frodo. Frodo, being his friend, knowing the wizard, he can tell that he's carrying a burden. He can tell that it's been weighing on him, whatever he's been doing. So I love this so much. They basically have a slumber party. It says, he pressed him for news of himself and of the wide world, and soon they were deep in talk, and they stayed up far into the night. Next morning, after a late breakfast, the wizard was sitting with Frodo by the open window of the study. So basically, yeah, they stayed up late talking like besties and had a late breakfast. Sounds so nice. And the fact that, again, this story's so special because we're only in chapter 2 and we're already like, oh my God, Gandalf is back. Yay. And then you see them staying up late and chatting, and Tolkien, it's just one sentence that he says that they stayed up into the night talking. We don't need a whole detailed, intimate picture of what their banter is like as friends. We just know. And that's some of the things that I get frustrated about with some of the modern fantasy books that I read. I don't need all of this banter to know that these people are friends. Like, show me that they're friends. Don't tell me. I don't need all these pages of dialogue of just them like shooting the shit. I just need one sentence to know that they care about each other. And it's shown in this chapter how much Gandalf really does care about Frodo. We know how much he cares about Bilbo. And just the few lines of dialogue that we get between them, you know, and the way that they talk to each other, old friend, etc., it warms your heart a little bit. And it almost makes it more special and more heartwarming not to go into detail about their deep talk late into the night as friends, because it's more relatable. I can picture them just sitting, talking, catching up. It makes me understand the closeness of their relationship that much more, just knowing that they stayed up late into the night talking, and I don't need more than that. And I love that Tolkien doesn't necessarily show us intimately what their relationship was like in that zoomed in of a lens. The next morning, the conversation grows darker. Frodo's basically like, you started talking about this ring, you started talking about how dangerous it is, you know, what's going on here. Tolkien's language about the bright spring day and the bright morning. A bright fire was on the hearth, the sun was warm, the wind was in the south, the light of morning, thinking about the spring when he took Bilbo on his adventure. So there's all of this language around light, brightness, new beginnings, but it's contrasting this dark, ominous tone about this conversation they're about to have. And now that I've read the full chapter, I think that Gandalf didn't really want to reveal all of this to Frodo as soon as he got there. He wanted to just have a special night with his friend before revealing the true breadth of the burden that Frodo is bearing at this point. So Gandalf starts to explain what's going on here and gives us this brief description of what happens when a ring overtakes a mortal, or when a mortal bears a great ring, which I found very unsettling. He says, a mortal who keeps one of the great rings does not die, but he does not grow or obtain more life. He merely continues. Like so creepy, until at least every minute is weariness. If he often uses the ring to make himself invisible, he fades. He becomes in the end invisible permanently and walks in the twilight under the eye of the dark power that rules the rings. Yes, sooner or later if he is strong or well-meaning to begin with, but neither strength nor good purpose will last. Sooner or later the dark power will devour him. How terrifying, said Frodo. There was another long silence. The sound of Sam Gamgee cutting the lawn came in from the garden. So, this is our first window into just how dark this ring is. Mind you, not even about the effects that it can have on the greater world, but just what the effects that it can have when you bear a ring. And Frodo's reaction to what Gandalf tells him, and him saying how terrifying, if you know what happens, oh my God, like, he has no idea what is about to come at this point. To see Frodo's fear in this moment, the silence in the reaction to what Gandalf says, and then the sound of Sam cutting the lawn came in from the garden. Because they're in the Shire. They're in the safety of the Shire, sheltered in their little lives. Sam is tending to the garden. Frodo's hanging out with his friend Gandalf. And to him, that's scary, but it's a distant fear at this point. I also think it's just absolutely terrifying how Tolkien describes the long life that one gets from possessing a ring to merely continue until at least every minute is weariness and fading, becoming in the end invisible permanently. It's like existing in this purgatory between life and death. in this horrible middle ground. It's terrifying to me, and especially terrifying when in Middle-earth you know that there are immortal beings like elves who are, it's immortality, but it's a beautiful form of immortality. But this form of long life, it's not actually living and it's not actually dying, it's just continuing. And I think anyone who's been severely depressed knows what it feels like to feel invisible, to feel like you're continuing or merely continuing until every last minute is weariness, holding on to dark feelings, being kept in a loop of just feeling horrible about yourself. Every minute just feels like a struggle. That's what it reminds me of, at least this description. And this is our first window into what the powers of the ring can be like. We talk a little bit more about later. But then Gandalf reveals what he knows to Frodo and what Bilbo knew, because Frodo's like, wait a minute. Did you know this? Did Bilbo know this? What is going on? I'm sure his head's spinning in this moment. Gandalf reassures him that Bilbo would not have passed something so dangerous on to Frodo. Gandalf explains that he first began to wonder about the ring when he heard Bilbo's story about how he acquired the ring. When he lied to Gandalf about how he came across the ring, he told him it was gifted to him for winning the game of riddles, when in reality, Bilbo found it on the ground in the tunnel. He was suspicious of this because Bilbo's story sounded much like Gollum. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but there's clearly a lot of similarities between Bilbo's character and Gollum's character. And I think that they are very much alike and would be more similar if it weren't for circumstance, which we talk about towards the end of the chapter a little bit more. Bilbo's resentment and anger toward Gandalf whenever Gandalf asked him about the ring also made Gandalf wonder, okay, what's going on here? Once Bilbo left the Shire, Gandalf knew what he was dealing with, and that at least this was some great ring, some powerful ring. But at that point, he says all he could do was wait. He says he was unsettled, but he did not trust his fellow wizard and head of the Wizard Council, Saruman. So what I love about Gandalf's character is his intuition, his feeling that, okay, something's going on here with my friend. Clearly, it's not normal. And he really just trusts his gut when it comes to these really intense matters. I love his character so much because he's such a powerful being. And at this point, we haven't seen the true breadth of his power, but he is an incredibly powerful being of Middle-earth. And yet we still see him struggling to make decisions, wondering if he made the right decision, going back and forth on what to do, despite him being this powerful wizard. And that's what makes it so relatable to us and applicable to our own lives. How many times are you wondering, what am I going to do? Did I make the right decision? Oh my God, what am I doing? But Gandalf reminds us to trust our gut, to trust our intuition, to follow it. But it's okay to be unsure about what to do. So Frodo is immediately, upon learning the effects of what the ring may do and Gandalf kind of scaring the crap out of him, he has concern for Bilbo. And I think that's so sweet and telling of Frodo's character. He's not saying, oh my gosh, Gandalf, what about me? His first concern about this is specific to Bilbo's well-being. He says to Gandalf, and again, he's been bearing the ring, Frodo has, for 17 years at this point. And what Frodo says to Gandalf is, there wasn't any permanent harm done, was there? Asked Frodo anxiously. He's concerned about Bilbo. He's concerned about what the ring, how it affected Bilbo here. Gandalf explains that he believes hobbits are resilient and Bilbo will be okay. And he also notes that basically he feels responsible for Frodo at this point. Even though Frodo's concerned about Bilbo because he loves Bilbo and it's very sweet, Gandalf is like, okay, but I'm concerned about you right now because Bilbo's rid of the ring. You have it now. I just think it's so sweet that Frodo cares for him so much, he wants to make sure he is okay before even thinking about himself and how the ring may have affected him. Gandalf then goes on to explain that the dark power growing doesn't know much about hobbits, nor do any of the wise, as Gandalf puts it. Hobbits are sheltered because they are unknown to most of the world. And one of the Hobbit superpowers is to be able to hide and to sneak around. And it's almost like their community as a whole is able to take advantage of that superpower and just kind of hide from the greater world outside. When Gandalf explains that this dark power does not know much about hobbits and that their existence has been overlooked, he also says that that will not last and he will take them over and make them all his slaves. Like, okay, Gandalf, way to scare the shit out of Frodo if he wasn't scared already. Frodo's deeply unsettled. He is like, what is going on? He had not realized the fragility of the Shire's peace at this time, like all the other hobbits, and Gandalf is trying to impart on him how serious this situation is. And Frodo is taking it seriously. He is very concerned. Gandalf also is concerned for the well-being of the Shire, and Gandalf's purpose as a friend of the hobbits, as someone who's taken interest in hobbits despite being a powerful, wise being of Middle-earth, he wants to protect the peace of the Shire. He's concerned that will be taken from them. And at this point, Frodo is basically like, what are we going to do with this ring? What's going on here? So Gandalf asks Frodo to hand him the ring and he throws it into the fire. And this is when it is revealed to Gandalf for certain that the ring that Frodo has is the One Ring. Frodo's reluctant to give it to Gandalf before he throws it in the fire, showing how it's already taken its hold on Frodo. He's already being affected by this ring. Gandalf is clearly concerned for Frodo in this moment. He notices how reluctant he is, and he notices his growing possessiveness and behavior around the ring. He explains to Frodo that the text on the ring it's just 2 lines from the full poem, and in this moment you can just see how devastated Gandalf is and how concerned he is. Frodo is also filled with fear because imagine Frodo, he's looking at his old friend, he can see how concerned he is, he sees how detrimental this realization is to Gandalf, and it fills him with fear. And Frodo says, this ring, how did it come to me? He has already experienced a lot of loss in his life. Frodo has not had an easy life, especially for a hobbit. His parents drowned in a horrible boating accident. His only adult mentor or a person similar to a parent that he loved has left him alone. And now he's realizing that he has this huge burden that's been passed to him and can see how devastating this is to Gandalf. So Frodo is caught in the middle of this situation that is completely beyond his comprehension, despite him already having to deal with all of this trauma in his life. He basically, after he asks Gandalf, how did this come to me? To which Gandalf says, well, that is a long story. And he proceeds to explain the history of the ring. He says that the enemy lacks this ring. It would allow him to cover all lands in darkness. He explains that the elves have 3 rings, the dwarves 7, and 3 recovered by Sauron, whereas the others were consumed by dragons. 9 he gave to mortal men whom he ensnared and became Ringwraiths. He also explains that Sauron let a great part of his own power pass into it, so he could rule all the others, and if he gets the One Ring, he will rule them all, as the poem goes. Sauron believed the One Ring had been destroyed long ago by the elves, but now he knows that it has been found. So my question is, I guess, how did Sauron not know that Isildur took the ring? I guess after Sauron was destroyed, his spirit kind of dissipated. Wait, I'm going to give this a quick Google search. How did Sauron not know Isildur took the ring. Let's see what the internet says. This is the AI overview, so I don't know how much I trust this, but it says Sauron likely didn't immediately know Isildur had taken the ring because his physical form was destroyed in the battle. His spirit weakened and scattered. While his spirit remained connected to the ring, it wasn't direct or constant, especially not immediately after the battle. His knowledge was also clouded by his arrogance and his belief that no one would choose to destroy the ring. So that's another thing I've heard, that Sauron doesn't believe that anyone would be able to destroy the ring. But literally in the text, Tolkien writes that he believed that the one had perished, that the elves had destroyed it as should have been done. So it's not necessarily true that Sauron does not believe the ring could be destroyed, because right here Tolkien's writing that for a while Sauron believed that the elves had destroyed the ring. Basically, Sauron was mostly defeated or like scattered around, and I think that's why he did not know about the ring. But I'm trying to read more about this. Let's go to Reddit. Screw this AI overview. Ugh, not helpful. Okay. Middle Earth blog. This is where we get a good explanation, probably. So, did Sauron really believe the One Ring had been destroyed? When Gandalf is explaining the history of the ring to Frodo, he says Sauron believed that the ring had perished, the elves had destroyed it. Yes, exactly my question. This is at odds with a number of statements made later in the books. Even in the same chapter, Gandalf says that the ring cannot be destroyed by any means elves have access to. Wouldn't Sauron know that? Also at the Council of Elrond, it stated that it's inconceivable to Sauron that someone would want to destroy the ring. It follows then that Sauron could not have thought that the elves destroyed his precious ring. Why do you think Tolkien would make such an oversight? Okay. Let's begin by differentiating between Gandalf and Tolkien. Gandalf told Frodo what he had deduced of Sauron's thought. It is logical to assume that Sauron thought the ring destroyed because A, he was weaker than he had been when he possessed the ring, and B, he did not begin searching for the ring until Gollum was captured and revealed it still existed. Okay, but how does this make sense? What I think we can infer from these apparent discrepancies in the text is that Sauron, reconstituting himself without the ring, could find no sign that it still existed, even though Tolkien mused in his private notes that Sauron was still in rapport with the ring. What else should one assume if there are no claimants to the ring and it's not with the maker? If Gandalf's deduction is correct, then Sauron overestimated the wisdom and power of the elves, which is not necessarily contradicted by the later comments in the book. After all, the elves had control over Mordor and Mount Doom itself. Okay, yeah, at the time, they therefore had the means to destroy the ring. Isildur's inability to do the deed was what saved Sauron, but after he reincarnated himself as Sauron, had no idea what happened. Isildur was dead. Had he kept the ring, it would presumably have extended his life, eventually turning him into a wraith. No one showed up with the ring in their possession, either as a living being or a wraith. Mordor remained in Gondor's control until the Great Plague of 1636. Hence, Gondor had the ability to destroy the ring for over 1600 years. So, basically, Sauron assumes that the ring was destroyed because this battle, after the last alliance of men and elves, Gondor takes control of Mordor, etc. The elves have control of it too, and he just kind of assumes that they would have destroyed it. Sauron, when he comes back, he does not assume that the ring still exists. Because if the ring still exists, someone would possess it and become this powerful, or become a wraith, right? If they were possessing it. And there is no such person. So he assumes that in the couple thousand years that he's, putting his spirit back together or whatever, he assumes that during this time the men or the elves have destroyed the ring, and does not realize necessarily that the only reason he was able to put his spirit back together was because the ring still existed. He thinks, oh, I'm just that powerful. Once he realizes that the ring was not destroyed, and he realizes that it had existed for the whole time and hadn't been destroyed by men or elves in those thousands of years, he's like, well, they had all this time to destroy the ring and they didn't do it. So clearly nobody can destroy the ring. An interesting discussion to think about. I don't know how much more clarity that gives me. However, it explains a little bit about why Sauron assumed that the ring had fallen out of existence. So Frodo wonders why the ring was not destroyed, just like I'm sure Sauron wondered why the ring was not destroyed. And Gandalf gives him a quick overview of the last alliance of men and elves, basically that Gil-galad, the High King of the Elves, and Elendil, the King of Men, they defeat Sauron, however they die in this process. Isildur, then the son of Elendil, cuts the ring from Sauron's hand, takes the ring. He is then unable to destroy it, and instead of destroying it, he takes the ring, goes away with it, and then on his journey, he is killed by a bunch of orcs, falls into the river, and the ring kind of slips off his finger as he swims. So Sauron does not know at this point where the ring is or what happened, and his spirit is hiding away in Mirkwood Forest. We then hear about how Gollum acquired the ring from Gandalf, who has been tracking Gollum with Aragorn. Gandalf explains how Gollum was once a hobbit-like creature, more closely related to a line of river-dwelling hobbits and from a rich family. He explains that Gollum's cousin Deagle finds the ring first, Gollum murders him, takes it from him, claiming it's his birthday and he deserves it. Here's another example of the ring making the bearer feel as though it was meant for them. It's not enough to just have it. It needs to be a gift to you. It needs to be meant for you. Gollum feels as though he's owed it. He's corrupted by the ring. He's eventually shunned by his own family because of his wrongdoings. Basically, he starts to wear the ring, listen in on the gossip about the family members, cause trouble, and his grandmother, who's the matriarch of his wealthy river hobbit family, shuns him and is like, you gotta go. He is described as being the most inquisitive and curious of his family, which I thought was interesting because, again, shows how Gollum is similar to both Bilbo and Frodo. He's inquisitive, he's curious, he's basically a hobbit. Tolkien writes, he was interested in roots and beginnings, he dived deep into deep pools, he burrowed under trees and growing plants, he tunneled into green mounds, and he ceased to look up at the hilltops or the leaves on trees or the flowers opening in the air. His head and his eyes were downward. So, question about why is it the ring that makes him want to look? What is it about roots and beginnings that are so evil and horrible to want to look into? The ring's impact on Gollum here, it's clear it basically kind of makes him into this malicious, hollow version of himself. He grows to hate the light so much that he can't even look at it. He burrows under the mountain. It says, looking for secrets. The roots of those mountains must be roots indeed. There must be great secrets buried there, which have not been discovered since the beginning. Why is the ring making Gollum so interested in roots, beginnings, and secrets? I don't totally understand that or what's so evil and malicious about it, but what Gandalf does say is that all the great secrets under the mountain turned out to be empty night. There was nothing more to find out, nothing worth doing. So perhaps it's about chasing something and possessing things that are not meant for you or that are empty, that don't have meaning to them, that don't fulfill your soul. He's burrowing under this mountain looking for this so-called secret, and it could be the ring just driving him to madness and using the curiosity that Gollum had inherently, and the ring is using that curiosity and that inquisitiveness against him to rid him of himself and focus him on things that are, according to Gandalf, nothing worth doing. Gandalf does say that Gollum was stronger than any would expect against the power of the ring because a small part of himself was still there. And again, maybe it's that curiosity. Gandalf believes that there is some hope for Gollum's redemption, that he still may be saved since he lived in darkness. He seldom wore the ring. Tolkien writes, he hated the dark and he hated the light more. He hated everything and the ring most of all. So, thinking about what the ring doesn't necessarily symbolize, because I want to read this and approach the story through the lens of how Tolkien intended it, where it's a story, it's meant to be applicable to things, but it's not necessarily an allegory for things. So in this case, we're learning more about the ring. What can the ring be applied to in our lives, in our day-to-day lives? And I was thinking about how it reminds me of power. It reminds me of money and greed. Like people who are always chasing a lot of money or only care about money. It's such an empty pursuit. And I think that when you chase things like money, like power, you grow to hate those things, and it's never enough. And you want to possess it. You want more and more. You want it to be given to you, but it's never going to fulfill you. And that's what I read the ring as. A lot of people say it's similar to, sins and sinning. At the end of the day, what it really is, it's just pure evil. And anything that is empty pursuits, such as, like I said, money, such as power, I can see pursuing power as being a pure evil, a power for the sake of power, or money for the sake of money, or control, right? And being able to control yourself or control the world around you or control people around you. It's a pursuit that's empty because it is never going to be enough. You're never going to be able to control everything. You're never going to be happy with all the money in the world or all the power in the world. And I think to me, that's what the ring reminds me of and what it could be applicable to you. But please let me know your thoughts and what you think the ring could be applicable to in our lives. This is where I also write that Gandalf, he notes the similarities between Bilbo and Gollum himself. So it's not just me saying that Bilbo and Gollum are similar, like we're getting it in the text that literally Bilbo and Gollum are similar. And Gandalf says that because of these similarities between Bilbo and Gollum, this leads him to believe in the strength of hobbits or hobbit kinds against the hold of the ring, which calls back to the prologue. Tolkien describes the toughness of hobbits, and he says that although these round-faced, big-bellied, barefoot, tiny little creatures are a little silly and like to be comfortable, they are tough, and he even says in the prologue they're difficult to kill, which I thought was funny. Frodo rejects that Gollum is at all similar to hobbits in general, which is a bold statement, right? Gollum is literally a hobbit, and Frodo says no, hobbits don't cheat, and that Gollum is wicked. However, Gandalf responds to Frodo and says, listen, I think this is a sad story and it might have happened to others, even to some hobbits that I have known. And what we're seeing here is that circumstance is what caused Gollum to end up the way that he is versus Bilbo being able to give away the ring. Gandalf emphasizes to Frodo that Gollum actually did not have any will in the matters of the ring. He says that the ring left Gollum. It decided to do so. And Bilbo is the only one known to history to be able to give away the ring willingly. And even Bilbo needed Gandalf's help. Frodo asks him why the ring would leave Gollum for Bilbo, and if an orc would have been better suited. And this was my question exactly. I think I asked it in the first episode. Why Bilbo? And we get this really interesting phrase from Gandalf talking about other powers that are at work. So we know that the ring is a character in and of itself. It's an evil that has this agency to be able to drive its own fate. Gandalf says, I can put it no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring and not by its maker, in which case you were also meant to have it, and that may be an encouraging thought. He says not by its maker. So what that means is that Sauron, and in turn the ring itself, did not intend for Bilbo to find it. It was not in the ring's best interest. If you're thinking about the ring as always trying to get back to his master, it's not in the ring's best interest to be picked up by a hobbit, to be picked up by Bilbo. But what Gandalf is saying is that Bilbo was meant to find the ring by some other force, by some other power. So what could that other power be? Is that the gods of Middle-earth? Is that the creator of Middle-earth trying to influence what's going on here? What other power is this? So let me know your thoughts on what other power could have been at play here for Bilbo finding the ring and in turn Frodo possessing it. Gandalf reveals that he wasn't 100% sure of this ring being the One Ring until he had just tested it moments ago. He says that he had tracked down Gollum to tell him the truth, and that Gollum again claims the ring was a birthday present from his wealthy grandmother, although clearly his murder of his cousin had haunted him. And Gandalf says he would repeat it to the ring over and over again, that it was his birthday and Deagle ought to have given him the ring. So he's repenting to this ring, and it's through lies, right? Empty lies, and just driving him deeper into this madness because he murdered his cousin to be able to possess this ring. Gollum resents Bilbo and knows his name and knows he came from the Shire and wants his revenge, or wants to get his ring back. We learn from Gandalf that when he saw Gollum, he found him to be revived a bit since the ring was taken from him. He actually left the mountains. He still feared the light, but it says he was starving and felt terribly old. So on Gollum's search for Bilbo, he was able to find a lot of people who knew Bilbo's name, because when they were returning back from their quest, they were not secretive about it. Gollum tried to go to the Shire, but Gandalf says the trail gets cold, and then he says that he had to enlist Aragorn to help him track down Gollum. And this is our first introduction to the character Aragorn, and I'm noticing a pattern with what Tolkien does when we are first introduced to characters who are incredibly important, is he downplays them a lot. And I think it's so funny because I see so much advice about writing, and when you introduce a character, the first sentence in their first introduction to them, it has to show you who they are. And I love how Tolkien is like, no, I'm actually gonna give you the most boiled down, basic, humble description of who this guy is. And instead of telling you who he is, I'm gonna show you who he is. So Aragorn's first introduction in the whole trilogy, he's introduced as the greatest traveler and huntsman of this age of the world. Traveler and huntsman. The one true king of Gondor. Traveler and huntsman. I mean, come on. It's so funny. So, similar to when we're introduced to Sam. Sam's just the gardener's son. When we're introduced to Gandalf, he's an old, bent, gray wizard. So funny. So, Gandalf and Aragorn, they track down Gollum, and they learn that he's made his way to Mordor. Basically, Gollum's open to the summons because he's imprinted by this ring, and Sauron's calling all evil things to Mordor. Gollum goes. Gollum is tortured there, and he reveals the name Baggins, he reveals the Shire. So now the enemy knows that wherever the ring is, it's related to Baggins, and it's related to Shire. Gandalf says he knows where Isildur fell. He knows where Gollum found his ring. He knows that it is a great ring, for it gave long life. He knows it is not one of the three, for they have never been lost and they endure no evil. He knows that it is not one of the 7 or the 9, for they are accounted for. It is clear, then, that Frodo and the Shire are in trouble big time. And this is when we get a wonderful conversation between Frodo and Gandalf that I love it. I love it so much. And I feel like in this part of the chapter, it feels like Tolkien is speaking directly to us, right? Frodo is afraid. And he says, "Oh, Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance." Frodo's fear is so palpable in this moment because now he knows the full story. I mean, he was terrified in the beginning when Gandalf was talking about what the ring does to people. Now he realizes that he's in trouble, the Shire's in trouble, and his reaction is so human. It's so relatable. It's, why me? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? He says it twice. And then he says, what a pity that Bilbo did not kill Gollum. So going back, he's asking basically, why is this happening to me? Why didn't Bilbo kill Gollum when he had the chance? He's upset because Gollum is the reason that the enemy knows where the ring is now, really, at the end of the day. And he understands the severity of the situation. He's not making light of it. He's not dismissing Gandalf. He's just scared. And he's having this, it's like the stages of grief. It's when you're in denial. He's in this denial phase. He says, this should not be happening. Gollum should have been killed. What am I going to do, basically? Gandalf says in response to Frodo saying that Bilbo should have slain Gollum, he says that Bilbo's pity is the only reason that Bilbo's okay now, and the reason why the ring did not have a greater hold on him. Like, if you think about Gollum going into madness, how Gollum acquired the ring, he started with the murder of his cousin. Bilbo's acquisition of the ring began with mercy. It began with pity. And their possession of the ring contrasts each other because of the way that it started. But you can't say that Bilbo is inherently a better person than Smeagol, because it is just by mere circumstance that Bilbo already had the ring before he was even able to consider killing Gollum. Whereas Gollum laid eyes on the ring, his cousin had it and was alive, and the only way he was going to possess it, which the ring drives people to do crazy things, right? The only way he was going to be able to possess it was if he killed his cousin to possess it. And it's not necessarily Gollum is a worse hobbit than Bilbo, but rather the circumstance that he was in. So Frodo still does not really care. He resents Gollum. He is still afraid. He's still upset that the ring came to him this way. "I am sorry," said Frodo, "but I am frightened and I do not feel any pity for Gollum." Now, if you've read the books, if you've seen the movies before, interesting, right? That Frodo's first sentiment towards Gollum, because Gandalf says, well, you haven't seen him yet. Like, he's a pitiful creature. Imagine somebody saying that about you. Like, oh, you haven't seen her yet. You'll have pity then. Anyway, Gandalf, he says Frodo hasn't seen him. Frodo says he does not wish to, and that Gollum deserves death. He's still like, this guy should have been killed. But again, like I was saying, if you've read the books before, you know that when we get to the end of the story, Frodo's pity for Gollum, it's there. And Frodo definitely grows to pity Gollum and grows to have mercy for Gollum and feel bad for him, essentially. So after Frodo reiterates that Gollum should have died or deserves death, we get our incredible monologue from Gandalf on the power of mercy. And this is the moment where I feel like Tolkien is speaking directly to us through his lens on war, on death. And I remember seeing an interview with Tolkien where he says that his stories, what they're really about, just like all stories, he says, is death. And that's why I think this paragraph and this monologue from Gandalf is really Tolkien speaking directly to us through the words. "My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill before the end. And when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not least. In any case, we did not kill him. He is very old and very wretched. The wood elves have him in prison, but they treat him with such kindness as they can find in their wise hearts." "All the same," said Frodo, "even if Bilbo could not kill Gollum, I wish he had not kept the ring. I wish he had never found it, and that I had not got it. Why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you make me throw it away or destroy it?" It's just it's so relatable. It's so applicable to dealing with any hardship in life, any burden that is placed on you. Why me? I wish this was not happening to me. I wish none of this was happening. Why is this happening to me? Right? And Gandalf's monologue right before that, again, he is trusting his intuition. He has this incredible intuition and this gut feeling that Bilbo's pity, Bilbo's mercy could change the fate of the world. And what Tolkien is saying to us through this monologue is pity and mercy and kindness are more powerful than dealing out death and judgment. And they're always going to be more powerful, and you're never going to know the true ripple effect of an act of kindness, of an act of mercy or pity. You're never going to necessarily know in that moment, or maybe even ever, how that affects other lives. And I think that's a wonderful perspective on life, on death, on dealing with people that you view as evil or wretched, or you think they deserve to be punished in a certain way. Kindness and mercy and pity are always going to be more powerful than dealing out death and judgment. And I think another great lesson to take away from this portion is Frodo's palpable fear in this moment. And like I said, his denial. Almost at this point, we're moving to anger. Kind of yelling at Gandalf. Why did you let me keep it? Why didn't you make me throw it away or destroy it? Like, he's kind of angry. He doesn't want to be in this situation. And Gandalf explains to him that he couldn't let him or make him do anything. Throwing it away the ring would just return to Sauron. And he didn't make him do anything, and basically says, would you even throw it away? Can you even try? So Frodo tries to throw away the ring, cast it into the fire upon Gandalf saying, okay, try. You said you're mad at me for not telling you to throw it away. Go ahead, try. And then we get this lens into Frodo's mind in this moment, and he pulls the ring out of his pocket, and we see again the hold that this ring has on him. It's creepy, and his thoughts are really similar to the way Gollum speaking of the ring, even right after Gandalf explained to him everything that happened with Gollum and the ring, and Frodo has all this anger and this resentment towards Gollum and towards the ring. And yet, in this moment, Tolkien writes, the gold looked very fair and pure, and Frodo thought how rich and beautiful was its color, how perfect was its roundness. It was an admirable thing, and altogether precious. When he took it out, he had intended to fling it from him into the very hottest part of the fire, but he found now that he could not do so, not without a great struggle. He weighed the ring in his hand, hesitating and forcing himself to remember all that Gandalf had told him, and then with an effort of will he made a movement as if to cast it away, but he found that he had put it back in his pocket. Gandalf basically is like, told you so. See what just happened? So, like I was talking about before, the ring has this creepiness to it, I want to say, where it's pure evil, but it's described as so beautiful and pure. So it's a pure form of evil, and makes me wonder, okay, is the purest form of evil something that is so captivating that it is pure and beautiful? It's just a really creepy way to describe something that can destroy the world and is literally made from pure evil as fair and pure. It feels very dark. It feels even more corrupted with those descriptions. It's honestly terrifying when it's described to have all this power, to have all this evil, and then that's contrasted with Frodo holding it, looking at it, immediately being consumed by the ring. Gandalf then explains to Frodo that the only way to destroy it is to find the cracks of doom in the depths of Orodruin, the Fire Mountain, and cast the ring in there. And Frodo asks again, why me? I think this is the third time that Frodo is asking, why me? So I think there is some significance there to Frodo asking this question 3 times. Why me? Why was I chosen for this? And like I said before, we can all relate to this feeling when faced with difficult challenges that ask us to step up in life, or in general are just dealing with difficult times. You ask yourself, why me? I can't handle this. I can't handle all this. What am I going to do? Why was I chosen? And Gandalf says in this moment, you may be sure that it was not for any merit that others do not possess, not for power or wisdom at any rate, but you have been chosen, and you must therefore use strength and heart and wits as you have. And this is a great way to motivate yourself. If you're in one of those situations, remind yourself, you're not chosen for this because you're especially smart or especially strong or wise, etc. But you are chosen for this task. You are chosen to face this difficulty, and therefore you must utilize the strengths that you do have. And in response, Frodo's like, I have none of those things. And that's what makes Frodo such a endearing hero and a relatable hero. He is nothing special. He is just another hobbit. He does not look at this challenge and say, oh, I got this. Great. I've been wanting to go on an adventure. Like, I'm super brave and I'm excited for this. No, he's terrified. He is so terrified, and he does not hide that from Gandalf. He's so terrified that he asks Gandalf to take the ring. He doesn't even want it. Gandalf says, do not tempt me, that the way of the ring to his heart is by pity for weakness and the desire to do good. So we're seeing, again, the ring making its way into your psyche by exploiting the parts of yourself that aren't necessarily bad inherently, but the ring is able to make them evil. It's so dark, it's so evil, because how intimate is that it's exploiting parts of you that are uniquely yourself, and then those parts of you they're not part of yourself anymore until eventually you just become invisible and you become in this intermediary between light and dark, between alive and dead. It's incredibly terrifying. Gandalf says that he will help Frodo bear the burden, but that they must do something. And at this point, there is silence right after Gandalf says, we must do something soon, the enemy is moving. So at this point, Frodo, he understands how severe the situation is. It says, there was a long silence. Gandalf sat down again and puffed at his pipe as if lost in thought. His eyes seemed closed, but under the lids he was watching Frodo intently. Frodo gazed fixedly on the red embers on the hearth until they all filled his vision, and he seemed to be looking down into profound wells of fire. He was thinking of the fabled cracks of doom and the terror of the fiery mountain. Gandalf interrupts his thought. He says, have you decided what to do? Frodo says no, coming back to himself out of darkness, finding to his surprise that it was not dark and that out of the window he could see the sunlit garden. Or perhaps yes. So he's unsure. He's deep in thought, thinking about these horrible fiery mountains. Gandalf is watching him. And once Gandalf says, after some silence, have you decided what to do? Frodo's initial response and his gut reaction is, no, I don't know what do you mean? No, I don't know what to do. And then he sees the sun coming through the window. He sees the garden. And once he sees that, he says, or perhaps yes. So there's that light that's persisting through darkness here. He says, as far as I understand what you have said, I suppose I must keep the ring and guard it, at least for the present, whatever it may do to me. Frodo's so brave. He's so brave. And it's relatable because when you have to be brave, you don't feel brave. It doesn't feel good. It's scary. It's terrifying. So Frodo is terrified. He is unsure, and yet he chooses courage. He chooses to be brave because he has to preserve the things that he loves, like the Shire and his home. He says, as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. He also admits that I should like to save the Shire if I could, though there have been times when I thought the inhabitants too stupid or dull for words, and have felt that an earthquake or invasion of dragons might be good for them, but I don't feel like that now. So he's even admitting that this dullness to the Shire, which it seems like he's even taken for granted, now that he sees how fragile it is and he sees the danger that's being posed here, he doesn't want anything to happen to the Shire. And he is willing to go on this perilous journey. I mean, he doesn't quite know where he's going at this point or the extent to his journey, but he knows that he must leave. He says, I ought to leave Bag End, leave the Shire, leave everything and go away. He sighed. And he's so scared, but he decides to do it anyway. And Gandalf is taken aback by Frodo's response. He says he did not expect it, but he agrees that Frodo must leave the Shire and insists that he also doesn't need to go alone. And in that moment, we circle back to the beginning of the chapter. Sam Gamgee, who's been clipping his shears outside the window throughout this whole conversation about all of this stuff that's going on. Gandalf realizes that he's listening and insists that Sam was eavesdropping. Sam says, eavesdropping, sir? I don't follow you, begging your pardon. There ain't no eaves at Bag End, and that's a fact. Just Tolkien being funny. I think that's so funny. Gandalf yells at him, don't be a fool. Sam's afraid, pleading to Frodo to help him so that the wizard doesn't hurt him or turn him into something strange. And Frodo is trying to keep himself from laughing. It says, hardly able to keep from laughing, although he himself was startled and rather puzzled. So basically, Sam admits that he overheard all of this. And Gandalf laughs. It says, suddenly Gandalf laughed. Because, Sam is so sweet. Okay, he says, I heard a deal that I didn't rightly understand about an enemy and rings and Mr. Bilbo, sir, and dragons and a fiery mountain and elves, sir. I listened because I couldn't help myself, if you know what I mean. Lord bless me, sir, but I do love tales of that sort, and I believe them too. Whatever Ted may say. Elves, sir, I would dearly love to see them. Couldn't you take me to see elves, sir, when you go? This is when Gandalf laughed. He says, come inside, and putting up both of his arms, he lifted the astonished Sam, shears, grass clippings and all, right through the window, and stood him on the floor. I can just see big Gandalf, like, reaching down through the window and picking up little Sam. Like, it's so sweet! Oh, he's so cute! And he basically is looking at Sam, and he smiles, and he's basically like, do you want to go? I think you should go, whatever. He actually says, I have thought of something better than that in regards to punishing Sam for listening in on this conversation. His punishment is to go away with Mr. Frodo. Sam, springing up like a dog invited for a walk. Me go and see the elves and all, hooray, he shouted, and then burst into tears. Oh, he's so sweet. So guys, ending on that sweet and happy note in a chapter where we have a lot of dark points and a lot of discussion of evil, scary things. I just think the way that Tolkien describes the ring is just terrifying, honestly. And I think when you read the books, it's even more terrifying than it appears in the movies. I don't know if the movies, the powers of the ring, they're such an enigma to me. Like it's hard to understand. It's hard to conceptualize. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that and about what you think the powers of the ring are, what you think that the ring does to a bearer and what it could be applied to in our world today. If you liked this episode, please rate, comment your thoughts. I want to hear from you guys. I'm having so much fun doing this. It is a great time and I would love your feedback. Next week, we will be getting into the next chapter, chapter 3. 3 is company. And if you don't already, follow me on TikTok, on Instagram at Lady of the Pod. I am so happy that you are a part of our fellowship. I really want to continue doing this and continue getting more listeners. So if you're a new listener, if you're just joining, please let me know your thoughts. Like I said, comment, follow. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Spotify. Thank you guys so much and welcome to our fellowship. Go enjoy a second breakfast, maybe make some tea, put your hobbit feet up and start reading chapter 3. I'll talk to you guys again soon.